Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in to a Christmas edition of Game Over, a crossover edition as well of Game Over Toronto and Winnipeg. Unfortunately, the Leafs' win streak against the Jets comes to an emphatic end in the Leafs' next generation game. So I'm your host, Zach Payne. I am representing the Toronto side of things. Joined with me is Ty Dilello, representing the Winnipeg side of things. And Ty, how are you feeling after a big win for the Jets?
I am excellent. I think the Jets. This would have been the seventh game in a row that the Jets would have lost to Toronto. So it was good to finally get the monkey off the back. I think Jets and Leafs, or at least from the Jets side, we consider Toronto a pretty big rival. A team that we really want to beat. So we're definitely in a good mood today as we go into the Christmas break on a happy note. And maybe Toronto's probably going into it on a bit of a down after this one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a week ago, these two teams were in pretty similar spots where they were both vying for the top spot in their respective divisions. Obviously, the Leafs have lost a couple here, and the Panthers have taken over that top spot. Meanwhile, for the Jets, the Wild have gone on a losing streak, allowing Winnipeg to really bolster their lead on that division as well. So, we're going to talk all things Leafs Jets, of course. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Game Over Toronto, and make sure you hop over and subscribe to Game Over Winnipeg as well. So, to start with, we'll start on that rivalry note because this is a bit of a weird rivalry in that these two teams are not in the same conference, but we saw the animosity start to develop in the Canadian division season when they played 9 times or whatever it was. And that's carried over in the previous couple years as well. Obviously, the infamous Jason Spezza knee on Neil Pionk, getting himself his first suspension in the NHL. There was that whole Logan Stanley incident that led to the infamous Mark Scheifele quote, "Is there anything better than beating the Leafs?" So we'll start there, Ty. Is there anything better than beating the Leafs?
Honestly, no, man. Like from a Jets, like we don't like Toronto here in Winnipeg. I know that for sure. I think it kind of goes to the fact that Toronto is a really good hockey team, and we're both kind of jousting, fighting to be Canada's best team at like year in year out. And Toronto and Winnipeg are usually always around the top of the standings for Canadian teams. And I know Edmonton's in the mix as well. But I think that there's not, I wouldn't say hatred, but just like it's a team that I don't know. It's for, if you're not a Leafs fan, I think it's easy like to not be a fan of them, from everything from the media to how much the team's hyped, all of that. Toronto, I think for whatever reason, is a pretty polarizing hockey team, and for Jets fans who are maybe a little more um, blue collar, passionate. There's just I think a long kind of standing rivalry that's kind of developed since, you're right, since around the bubble, the Canadian division for sure, when we started to play each other more. I know now I think we only play each other twice a season, and it was the Leafs that had won 6 in a row until today. And I think that for Winnipeg people, pundits, there was a lot of talk. Are we ever going to beat the Leafs again? So to get the monkey off the back today. I think it's gonna calm a lot of the Jets fans' nerves for a little bit, and it's always good to get a win on Toronto, and we'll see what Mark Scheifele says in the locker room after the game.
I'm sure he will have something for everyone out there because in the waning moments of this game, he was very chirpy with the Leafs bench, with the Leafs on the ice. He does not shy away from making his feelings about the Leafs known, and that kind of applies to the whole Jets team. And I can at least speak for myself in that I share the resentment the other way. Like I don't like the Jets very much at all, and I really don't like Mark Scheifele. So whenever he scores a hat trick today, and just like the only saving grace for me is him and Kyle Connor are on my fantasy team. So
There you go.
that's good.
Yeah.
But I hated every moment of that game. Seeing Shifley rack up the points, I was just seething with anger. Now this we'll get into the how and why this happened, obviously, but specifically going back to earlier in the season, the Jets that have a historic start to the season and their first loss comes against Toronto. And I know back then I came out of that game very happy because, you got to keep the bragging rights up a little bit. How much, so obviously you say 6 in a row plays a big role into this game. Obviously, the Leafs are banged up, but the Jets, everyone has injuries. Nikolai Ehlers, I think, was day-to-day coming into this game questionable, but the Jets' big boys were the ones, big top line, Kyle Connor, Mike Scheifele, they step up in this game to bring it home. Aside from that, there wasn't much, but just speaking on the top line specifically, what did you like from them today?
Yeah, obviously them scoring 5 goals on Toronto, like I know the empty netter, but they've just been very dynamic the last couple of games. I think the last 2-3 games they've had, I think 85% of our team's goals. Before that they had kind of gone cold for a stretch, and with that, the Jets got cold for a stretch. We kind of have been kind of winning and losing by how the top line has been scoring, as we're not getting a lot of 5-on-5 goals from our second, third, and fourth line. Albeit when we beat Minnesota 5-0 on Friday or Saturday, that was a more spread out performance. But aside from that, we've kind of been living and dying by the first line's production. So they were all, I think, Kyle Connor, especially Mark Scheifele, and I'll throw Gabriel Velarde. Yeah, they were all just they're building kind of chemistry. As the season goes, they're just kind of getting better and better playing together. For Jets fans, it's great to watch. It's great to see. They're just creating so much, offensive time and chances, because earlier this year and last year, it was a line that, they're a good first line offensively, but they would actually allow more goals 5-on-5 than they would score. So a lot of Jets fans were kind of questioning why they're together if they don't, if they're all minuses. So this year, and as of late, they're kind of turning that around and producing more, and giving Jets fans, I guess, a lot of reason to keep them together for the foreseeable future. I think there was a lot of talk to get Nikolai Ehlers up there, which may happen at some point, but it was another good step in the right direction. Today, Mark Scheifele, 3 goals, Kyle Connor, 2 goals, Gabriel Velarde, 2 assists. So can't say anything bad about them today.
Yeah, and that Velarde assist on the second Scheifele goal was just a perfect backhand pass, like absolutely beautiful to watch. And I actually can relate to some of the issues with depth, as the Leafs bottom 6, they had a really good week last week, discovering something with that Domi and Robertson McMahon line. That obviously wasn't even together today, as the injury to Austin Matthews has forced the Leafs to kind of adjust a lot of their top 6. And in that, the top 6, it's very much the same for the Leafs, where they live and die by the star players. And when the star players don't score multiple goals in a game, this is the result. Obviously the defense was a step back. The Jets, very opportunistic in this game, that didn't really have a lot of chances at either end. I'll get into the Jets defense in the second segment, but it was very impressive to see how efficient the Jets were at converting their chances, and to get a few at 5-on-5. It's just skilled players making skilled plays. Kyle Connor's deflection goal, Scheifele's deflection goal. Then there was a little bit of a weird one with a jam play at the side of the net. Were you surprised that the Leafs didn't challenge that?
Yeah, I didn't know what was so. It was quite a quick goal, and then there was obviously the chippiness afterwards. But I guess obviously every team has a guy like in the locker room watching that, and then decide, like, the coach is on a headset to challenge. So I thought, yeah, I was shocked that it at least didn't go to some kind of review, but obviously we'll take that as well at the end of the day. But yeah, it could have. I was surprised that there wasn't a challenge, because I thought there could have been something there, that it could possibly be called back. But obviously the Leafs staff didn't see it that way, and I guess they didn't want to be wrong and give up a penalty and then put the game even more. But at the same time, it was already a 2-goal lead then. So
That's the thing,
I
is
guess it's a bit of a strange one.
The sentiment from Leaf fans is, what's the harm in trying? Because at that point,
Yeah.
if the goal stands, it makes it 4-1 with like 7 or 8 minutes to go. The game's out of hand. If you give up a penalty, the game is going to be just as much out of hand. And if it, on the 10% chance that it succeeds, because no one seems to know what goalie interference is anyways, you might as well take the chance. But very
Yeah.
yeah, very weird situation there. Obviously, doesn't really matter in the end, as the Leafs weren't able to generate much offense, which is going to lead nicely into the second segment here. Before we get into that, just a reminder, obviously, to hit that like button and subscribe to Game Over Toronto and Winnipeg. Also want to shout out Hyperdrive Hockey, which is the Game Over Network's flagship show. You can find it on the Game Over Network Hub YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Hyperdrive Hockey Tuesdays and Fridays. They do a great job covering all things hockey, not just in the NHL world. So go give them a listen. Now, this second segment, this is from an outside perspective. As a Leafs fan, watching the Jets, I watch them twice a year and then playoffs, right? So I don't really see the Jets much. But in this game, the Leafs, I think I had noted one 5-on-5 chance coming late in the third period on a 2-on-1. Aside from that, the Leafs really couldn't generate anything at even strength. And you had commented off the air that the Jets defense had been a little Jekyll and Hyde this season. So kind of break that down. What has the Jets defensive system been like in front of Connor Hellebuyck?
Yeah, as we see, obviously it helps having Connor Hellebuyck. I think is pretty undoubtedly like the best goalie in the world, or at least up there top three, just with how much he takes goals away off the like expected goals. I think he's always been number one in that stat, and I think he's well on the way to winning his third Vezina this year. But um, his success also is been attributed these last couple of years to the fact that the Jets are one of the best defensive teams in the league, statistics wise. I believe last year we were number one, and this year we're again in the top five for team defense. So our coaching staff has really really had the players buy in to like playing the right way, and that's without like big star players on our back end. Aside from Josh Morrissey, obviously he's a top defenseman in the league, but aside from that, we have guys like Demelo, Pionk, Colin Miller, Samberg, Hayden Fleury, Ville Heinola, like players that you wouldn't maybe suspect that they'd be able to play this sturdy, defensively night in, night out, and not allow these kind of grade A chances, these 5-on-5 chances that, a lot of other teams have been giving up. So a full credit to the coaching staff and a credit to the players for kind of buying in. And you're kind of seeing the fruits of the labor with, good defense does lead to good offense. And that's kind of been the Jets' mantra these last couple of years. We had a lot of the Jets back in their heyday were kind of not as defensive minded. They were more offensive minded, which had its pros and cons. And I think now, since they've kind of gone to this system, I think they're a much better team. I think that they're going to be a better playoff style team, hopefully, for this year. Who knows what the playoffs are going to be like again, but for now, all things are good on the defensive end, and as we make a lot of ordinary players look pretty good and get raises in their salary based on their play here in the city.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the guys by name. Neil Pionk has a standout play in this game on a back check on a breakaway attempt, getting a just beautiful stick lift on Mitch Marner. He also had a play early on where John Tavares tried to spin off of him to make a drop pass, and Pionk just plays the body perfectly. He is an excellent defenseman. Dylan DeMello, I remember back before the Jets got him when he was going to free agency, I developed a crush on him and wanted the Leafs desperately to sign him because he's just such a solid defenseman 5-on-5. He's not necessarily flashy, but you don't need a defensive defenseman to be very flashy. Just shut the play down, make a good first pass, and that's exactly what he does. Now, unfortunately, the Jets do suffer a major injury to Hayden Fleury. I don't know how instrumental he is to the lineup, but a non-contact knee injury it's always terrible to see non-contact injuries because that usually indicates the severity. Just break down what happened on that play and what the loss of Fleury could mean.
When I saw that, I was very to say, but, like, I was actually pretty not I guess the word's relieved. I was relieved that it wasn't one of our big players when I saw that, because yeah, I was it doesn't look good for Mr. Hayden Fleury, and fortunately he's playing kind of an elevated role right now with Dylan Sandberg out of the lineup. He's playing top four minutes with Neil Pionk. I know Dylan Sandberg is close to returning after the Christmas break, which will be good. Um, but yeah, I saw the play. I think that I'll have to see what the Twitter doctors are saying on that one after, and see what the coach Arneal said in his post game. But I expect him to kind of be shut down for a while, and I guess luckily we do have a kind of a plethora of defensemen kind of waiting in the wings that can play like a 6-7 role. I assume Sandberg's going to come back anyway. That will take Fleury's spot. But I think for now we're just kind of hoping it's not as bad as it looked on the TV feed for sure.
Well, you might get some good news. This from Scott Arneal after the game says Hayden Fleury is day to day after suffering a knee injury, which would be a massive relief. Now, I don't want to get your hopes too high because as a Leaf fan, I'm very aware that day to day can quickly turn into 5 to 6 weeks, maybe a trip to Germany, who knows. So we'll see what Fleury but that, I mean, if it's not a season ender, that's a win right there because that, again, non-contact, you usually assume
For sure.
something torn for sure. So very good that it's a minor injury, or at least relatively minor. Now the again, the Leafs unable to generate much in this game, and even when they do, Connor Hellbuck is there to shut the door for the most part, which, as you said, he looks like he is on his way to his third Vezina trophy. Now we'll break down what this means for the long term of the Jets in a bit. Flipping over to a Leafs perspective, the bottom six useless in this game. Obviously, in the second period, they load up the big line of Nylander, Marner, and Tavares, which effectively kills all the depth. And you just hate to see that because as Leaf fans know, whenever the Leafs load up their top line, the depth always suffers. The defense sans Chris Tanev in this game. Also not ideal. You hate to see that because Tanev has been so instrumental to the Leafs this season. It was just unfortunate that the Leafs really had nothing going offensively. Now, Ty, as a Jets fan, you say you hate the Leafs so much. Do you have any players on the Leafs that you hate specifically or that you're afraid of, I guess, in the sense, the way that I'm afraid of Kyle Connor? Oh, did we lose him? He might be frozen. Oh no. Okay, well, Ty's frozen. That's awkward.
We're back.
We're back. Okay, I'll restate the question. Sorry, my bad. So Ty, I'm just talking about the Leafs forwards here. I was talking. Yeah. So when I look at the Jets, Kyle Connor scares me every time he touches the puck, right? And I talked about my hatred for Mark Scheifele. Do you have any players on the Leafs that you like either hate or when they get the puck you kind of go, "Uh-oh, like that's bad"?
Yeah, like obviously, like your big players, the core four. And I was actually very, I guess a little surprised just how John Tavares is kind of having a bit of a resurgence season. Mm-hmm. I know not just the 2 goals today, but looking at his stats, a point per game player. I know he was down to about 64 points in 82 games last year, so he's back to a point per game this year. He looks better than he's looked in years, I thought. So I was very kind of surprised, and I guess not happy because I'm not a Leafs fan, but good for people that have him on your fantasy team, no doubt. And then, obviously, regular season, Mitch Marner is a very dynamic hockey player and is having a very good season, and he's very evasive on the ice, just the way he kind of very shifty, moves around, gets into the good scoring areas and creates offensive chances. And I'll say Austin Matthews too. I know he didn't play today, but yeah, those are the guys you have to worry about. And then on defense, Morgan Riley, and then after that, nobody. Like I'm looking at the Leafs. I'm looking at your David Kampf, Bobby McMahon, Nick. These are players. Matthew Knies. Unfortunately, the majority of them aren't NHLers on like a Stanley Cup winning team. Like um, in Winnipeg, like for example, like we're very fortunate to have like a really good third line, and Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton. Appleton's not that good, but even like we have Alex Iafallo playing on the fourth line, nightly, and we have guys like that. It's just I'm not seeing like that strong depth, four lines that you can like not be worried about sending out there. Like they are going to contribute once in a while, and I know that there's a lot of good young guy like Matthew Nyes. We'll see. He's looked good and he's looked bad at times. And you got some other young guys in the lineup too. Just right now, like if we're evaluating like Toronto against other top teams in the league, like I don't see Toronto having that depth up and down the lineup. So when you stack up that top line, the other lines aren't, if they're not doing anything offensively, it's going to be hard to win hockey games when you just have one line that's dangerous to play against 5-on-5.
Yeah, and look, the depth. I don't really care about the fourth line too much because the Leafs have kind of embraced a checking line philosophy. Steven Lorentz really embodies that. You saw him in this game banging and crashing with a few big hits. Even while he had the puck, he was just running through guys occasionally. But it's really the third line for the Leafs that has been the big killer all season, where the third line up until recently had generated nothing. Then this past week they go on a tear. They score like 9 goals in 3 games combined. And then today they break up the trio that had been working obviously due to injury. And Max Domi's most notable moment was fighting Alex Iafallo, which a valiant effort. I can respect Iafallo for dropping the gloves. Clearly not a fighter. So, I mean, sure, that's the only fight Max Domi will win this season because I guess you got to pick your battles wisely. Although he was trying to go at Adam Lowry in this game, so he might just be a little psychotic. I don't know, man. But yeah,
I forgot to mention Nylander too is a guy that to worry about too for I should have said him, but yeah, he looked he wasn't great today, but he's obviously like the Leafs' second best player, I would say. So
yeah, and look, obviously it's all going to come down to the playoffs for both the Leafs and Jets. Both of our teams are very accustomed to regular season success in the past half decade plus, and we'll just have to see what happens when the playoffs roll around. But as you mentioned, Mitch Marner in the regular season, elite. He could put up 100 points this season. In fact, I would say it's likely. William Nylander is on pace for 55, 56 goals, which is obviously incredible. He is going to be in the Rocket conversation, which I never thought I would say, but good for him. In a year where Austin Matthews is banged up and not playing his best, it's nice to have the goal scoring come back. Aside from that, I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this over to the third segment. And in that third segment, what we're going to do here is we are going to talk about long-term, big picture for both of these teams, because as I just said, it really only matters about the playoffs. And this has been a bit of a weird season in the NHL in which the Jets had the great start, obviously, and I think they are still first in the league. Is that true?
Oh yeah, still.
So
Minnesota, I think, lost yesterday. Yeah.
So the Jets are the team that looks to be the favorites for the President's Trophy right now. The Leafs are within the top 10. They're within striking distance of first in the Atlantic. But this hasn't been a year where the top dogs in each conference have been that dominant. The teams of the past few years, such as Dallas and Colorado, even Edmonton, Vegas in there, haven't quite been as good as they have been in the East. Florida, Tampa, the Rangers have fallen off like crazy. The Hurricanes and Devils are having nice seasons, but again, not the same success that they have seen in recent years. The Capitals are having a resurgent season. So in a season where Winnipeg, at least right now, looks very strong in the West, who in the Western Conference are you most afraid of and why?
Yeah, teams that we haven't had success against in the past. And I'm looking at Vegas and Colorado are teams that the Jets don't match up particularly well against in a playoff series historically, and even just looking at their rosters for this year. Colorado doesn't look as threatening yet. I assume they're going to make some deadline acquisitions to bolster their team because they're kind of a team that's built, with playoff style players, McKinnon, Nichushkin, et cetera, et cetera. Minnesota, for as good as they've been this year, I don't think they would scare Jets fans very much. The Jets swept the season series with them. Edmonton is obviously very good, but it's a team that the Jets have really had their number with in the past. So although Edmonton is very stacked offensively, um, and sure Edmonton can beat anybody in the playoffs, but I think the Jets, the two teams that we like to avoid, I would say, are Vegas, Colorado, and then also Dallas. Probably Dallas is a very good team, although they're not even in a playoff spot at this point as we're speaking, which is kind of crazy. They're only 19-13, 1 point out of Calgary for the last wild card, which is very, very surprising. But Dallas is going to make some moves. They're always kind of a tough out in the playoffs. So I would say those teams for the Jets. And then what about you for Toronto? Who do you not want to see in the playoffs, and who would you like to see like in that 2-3 matchup, or which wild card team would you like?
So obviously the easy answer is I am terrified of Florida, for obvious reasons. Look, for all of the Leafs' flaws in the playoffs especially, the one thing you can always count on is the Leafs are going to go to 7 games with the team that they're playing against, right? They are going to make it a long series. The lone exception to that was Florida when the Leafs made it to the second round and promptly got their asses kicked. Florida destroys them in 5 games. And that they scare me. They play like you said, the playoff style of hockey that the Leafs have traditionally struggled with, and the other team that does that is Boston. Though I'm not as even last year I wasn't scared of Boston, but it was pure the Leafs just not being able to score. That, like, last year's series was not a case of the Leafs just not playing playoff style hockey and losing to it. It was a case of the Leafs just had no offense and they weren't able to put the puck in the net. Jeremy Swayman is, even though he's having a bad year this year, he gives Leaf fans PTSD after that. Weirdly enough, the team I want to see is Tampa Bay, because they are the only team the Leafs have beaten, and historically the Leafs have always matched up pretty well with them. They match up the style of play really well, and the Leafs, much like how you say Winnipeg has the Oilers number, the Leafs have Andrei Vasilevsky's number for whatever reason. It's the weirdest quirk that he's the only goalie you can throw 35-point shots on in a game, and it'll end up with 5 goals. Like, the Leafs in their past, what is it now, 5? It's got to be like 13, or no, it's got to be like 15 playoff games. They've scored 3 goals or more once. They cannot score in the playoffs. But that streak, the start of that streak happens as soon as they stop playing Tampa Bay and play anyone else, because in that series that they beat Tampa Bay, they score, I think, 7 goals in one of those games. They score 5, yep. They score 4. Like, they were able to put the puck in the net with ease against Vasilevsky, and so for whatever reason, I guess they would be the team I favor. So now going back to Winnipeg now, what to break down specifically in those matchups, because you say, let's say Vegas is the team you match up against. What is it about a Vegas or Colorado specifically that it gives the Jets trouble?
Just like, yeah, Vegas and Vegas specifically, like, they're so deep. Like, their defense is so good. They're big. Like, look at Vegas's back end: Pietrangelo, Theodore, McNabb, Whitecloud. Like, these are big, sturdy guys that have won before. They've been known to shut down the Jets before. And then offensively, like, they're not, like, they have that deep 4-line depth, like, similar, to what the Jets have, but in the playoffs, their top players have played so much better than the Jets' top players. It's not even funny, and that's a Rick Bowness quote after the Jets got eliminated from 5 games to Vegas a couple years ago. And Colorado, it just goes the same. Just the players are more built for the playoffs, in that they play tough. They can score. Like, they have skilled guys that can also be physical. And like, our 2 best offensive players are Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor, that aren't overly physical. You have that with Mitch Marner, who not a playoff player. Like it's hard to win with those guys in the playoffs because you really need they either have to elevate their game to a certain degree to kind of match those guys, or you need to have that strong depth that can shut down the other team's big skilled players that also play the right way. Like these teams have so much going for them. Florida's similar. Florida, like it's just you need a certain style of hockey player to win once the postseason comes. And in years past, the Jets and the Leafs haven't had that necessarily, which only stacks the deck up bigger. So last season the Jets picked up Monahan and Toffoli, like another pair of soft players at the deadline who can score here and there, but in the playoffs they didn't. So if the Jets do go out and make deadline acquisitions, I would like to see them get a different type of player than they've gotten in years past to kind of bolster their lineup. And I'm sure Toronto's the same way in who they want to be getting. And I was just looking at the standings and I thought, I know you mentioned Tampa. Wouldn't it be cool if Toronto and Ottawa played in the first round, a battle of Ontario?
No, because
you don't want Ottawa?
I was talking about this with the Ottawa people on their crossover with Vancouver. I said the Sens beating Toronto in 7 games is inevitable. Like it's going to happen, and I can't handle an Ottawa playoff series. It wouldn't be good. But like realistically, historically, the Leafs have had Ottawa's number in the playoffs. If you go back to the early 2000s, the Sens, when they had some really good teams, the Leafs still managed to beat them in the playoffs. There's an infamous Game 7 that a couple of fun goals went in for the Leafs that led them to a win there. So historically speaking, yes, the Leafs would probably, and even like if you look on paper, the Leafs match up good with Ottawa. But whenever the Leafs and Senators play, there is something in the air, and the Senators just play their best hockey against Toronto. There was the infamous Ridley Greig incident last year, which really kind of put into perspective the psychological impact the Sens have on the Leafs, where it's just they play a more blue collar style against the Leafs, not necessarily in general, but the Brady Kachucks of the world, the Ridley Griegs of the world can actually do damage against Toronto just with pure hustle and effort, even when Timmy Stützle doesn't have a good game. And, he's a great player, but he is that same vein where he's not going to probably be a playoff performer. But Brady Kachuk, you bet he's going to be. Even if he's not as good as his brother, he's going to be something.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I guess you don't want, like, I think hockey fan, a lot of even just having Ottawa back in the playoffs, I think would be good for Canada. I know it's been a while since they've been decent. So regardless if I guess they play Toronto or not, it would still be just good to have another Canadian team back in the mix.
You know what? We might get a Kachuk goal.
Yeah.
We might get a Sens if the Sens do hang on to that second wildcard spot in the second half of the season. There, we could be looking at a Florida Ottawa first round. We could have Kachuk versus Kachuk.
That'd be amazing too.
That'd be something.
That'd be cool.
So
wonder how long till
it'll be fun. Now, but finally, before we switch over to our final segment here, if the playoffs started today, what is your confidence level that the Jets can, I'll say, go on a deep playoff run? I won't say cup, but deep playoff run. What would your confidence level be?
High, pretty high. Just the fact that we've been we've been really good this year. We've improved on some things from last year. Obviously, we're first in league in the regular season, which doesn't matter a ton once the playoffs start. But if we can make the right, deadline moves, pick up a little more depth on the back end, another top 6, top 9 forward, and if Hellebuck's just the Hellebuck from the regular season in the playoffs, the Jets I think they will be a tough out for teams, tougher than the last couple of years. So right now, confidence is obviously high. It wasn't, a week and a half ago when we were kind of in a slump, but all good teams, go through slumps during the season. It's just about kind of trying to come out of them as quickly as possible, and come out relatively unscathed, which I think the Jets have done. And now to kind of go into the Christmas break beating Minnesota and Toronto pretty convincingly. Confidence will be pretty high, I think. What about for What about Leafs Nation? How's it looking right now?
So the thing is, for the last probably 3 or 4 years in Leafs land, we have said you have to do something in the playoffs, otherwise some major changes are going to happen. And every year the Leafs lose, and nothing changes. Nothing will ever change because Brendan Shanahan continues to stick to his guns and say the core four is the way to go. So look, depending if they match up against Florida, my confidence is going to be negative. But if they match up against Toronto or Toronto, Tampa or Boston, the Toronto should theoretically be able to win those series. Like again, like they have Tampa's number to an extent. They at least match up really well against them. Boston, you have got to beat. Like there is no outcome where the Leafs,
Sure, yeah.
if the Leafs were to ever win a cup, which I doubt every day, but if they were ever to win a cup, it would not feel right unless they go through Boston. Like it's that monkey off the back. You
Yeah.
have to slay the dragon at some point. The old Canucks team, like the Canucks in 2011, whatever, or 2010, they finally beat Chicago, and then they go on a huge run because of it. The Leafs need a moment like that because the Leafs, honestly, they have some similarities to those early like 2010s, late 2000, like that kind of era of Canucks teams where there's a lot of skill. That skill does not necessarily translate to the playoffs. They just need to get the demons out of their head. And then if they beat Boston, if they win a series convincingly, anything's possible at that point. So it's just about, like everyone talks about, you just have to get into the playoffs and then you have a chance. For the Leafs, it's you just have to win a round and then we'll reassess because the first round boogeyman, even though they won a round, the first round boogeyman is still very much alive and well. So we'll just have to see. Now, with that being said, I'll turn us over to our fourth and final segment. This is the part of the show where we invite everyone's questions. So if you have any questions about the Leafs or the Jets, feel free to fire them off in the chat. And as you do, let me just quickly remind you guys that if you want to support Game Over, we do have the Game Over merch that you can go check out. We do have a holiday sale going on. I believe it's still going on for a couple more days. You can go to thegameovernetwork.com and you can check out the merch for all the Canadian markets and use code GO Holiday or Go Holiday so to get 15% off at checkout. So as we await questions, I'll start one off. On the broadcast, they brought up Connor Hellebuck's regular season versus playoff splits. Right, so obviously he had a bad playoff last year. Is there any concern about overworking Hellbuck in the regular season leading to problems in the playoffs?
Yeah, that's always been kind of linked to some. I think more and more Hellebuck's playing less in the regular season. Eric Comrie's getting some like more starts. Laurent Brossoit got more starts last year. I think the goal is obviously to have less than 60 starts for Connor this year. I assume they want to try to get him around 55 games to make sure that he's well rested and just ready to go mentally for the playoffs. Although Connor also said like he felt best he ever felt in that in those playoffs, and I think some reporters did a deep dive in the goals that were allowed, and they like 95% of them weren't really on him. So the Jets did not play to their structure at all during the playoffs. So I think that our success will more so be if the Jets can stick to what's done them so well in the regular season. I know the game will get tougher in the playoffs, just the way it's a new game. But yeah, if Hellebuck's feeling good, I have no worries there. He's a guy that kind of has, I guess, a bit of a monkey on the back. Just he hasn't led the Jets on a run aside from 2018. To the third round or better. So this is a good as year as any. I'm sure his confidence is I know that it's unwavering. It'll be very high. It's more so going to be about the players around him, contributing to the success, because I think Hellebuck's going to be dynamic as usual.
Yeah, well, and we've seen over in New York what having good goaltending can do, even if you don't play your best. The Rangers have had multiple deep playoff runs off the back of terrible analytics, Great shooting
Yep.
percentage, great goaltending, like great save percentage. So, like we saw today, an example of the Jets just being a very opportunistic team. If you can capitalize on your chances and have good goaltending, sky's the limit. So the Jets, theoretically, like obviously, we'll see what happens when the time comes. But theoretically, even if they don't play their best, they still have a pathway to a good run if Hellbuck is the X factor that he has been in the regular season for the past few years, and the Jets fans and everyone in the league knows that he can be. Now, throughout the stream, David has been firing off a ton of
David W.
comments. David W. Love to see the activity as always. It'll be
Love
so
him.
good to have a Battle of Ontario playoff series, although the Battle of Alberta has occurred more recently. Yeah, that 2022 series did irreversible damage to the city of Calgary. As a Calgarian, when that series happened, I was so ready for that because the Oilers were coming off a series where Mike Smith was horrifying in that first round. I believe it would have been one of those Kings series, and
LA, yeah.
going into that second round, Calgary, as a Calgarian, the Flames I do tend to support as my second team. I said the Flames are going to score 7 goals a game, and then game 1 happens and the Flames win like 9-6 or something. I'm like, yeah, that's how this series is going to go, and then everything just flipped on its head. McDavid and Draisaitl took over the world. It was a very bad time to be a Calgarian, and that obviously the Flames have kind of fallen off a cliff since then. The Tkachuk trade happened that summer afterwards. Johnny Gaudreau goes to Columbus. Rest in peace to Gaudreau. That whole everything just fell off for the Flames after that. But hey, they're in a playoff spot now. They're one of the most surprising teams of the first half of the season. I don't think it'll keep up, but good for them to at least they've gotten some fun performances from their young guys. So good to see that. But we need more rivalry series. I know Kaya on Game Over Vancouver was talking about how Vancouver needs a Seattle series to happen because that's such a natural, like that could be a great rivalry. So, you know what, like, what are some of your favorite like rivalries in hockey that you want to see in a playoff series?
I think of ones that we haven't really seen yet. Like obviously the ones that are geographically like the Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, Seattle would be really cool. It'd be nice to see Utah kind of get a rival soon. Like I'm trying to think who would be their rival, Colorado, something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
And then like California series, LA, San Jose in the past were always good.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I know Edmonton, LA plays each other every year. I'm kind of getting sick of LA losing to Edmonton every year.
I think it's like, but one of the Edmonton LA is like the Toronto Boston, where it's like it's a one-sided rivalry where LA hates Edmonton, but Edmonton's like, we don't think about you. You suck.
Yeah, so they're out there for sure. These matchups, like there's just a ton of different unique matchups that I like to see. I'm just going up in the chat. I wanted to know if we wanted to. David W was very not happy about Joseph Wall again. He said that he's not an NHL caliber. I see him having to sit in the press box in favor of Hildeby and either Arthur Aktamayev from the Marlies or Vladislav Peksa from the ECHL. Instead, without Stollers, the Leafs are going to lose 2 straight. I guess, what do we think about Joseph Wall? Is he NHL caliber, or should we just send him for that ECHL guy, that Russian?
So Peksa, look, great prospect. Artur Akhtiamanov came over from the KHL this year. Great prospect. They are not NHL ready. Dennis Hildeby has been below NHL caliber. Matt Murray in the one game he played was below NHL caliber. Joseph Woll, look, is he a perfect goalie? No. This is his first full season in the NHL. In the glimpses we've seen of him, he has been fantastic, especially the only reason that series against Boston went 7 games is Joseph Woll playing out of his mind. Against Florida, the only reason the Leafs even won a game against Florida was Joseph Woll playing out of his mind. So, look, Joseph Woll has proven in limited action that he elevates his game in the playoffs. In the regular season, like you saw today, he had a couple of great saves, great cross-crease saves. He's very athletic. The goals that go in, so one empty netter, obviously that doesn't matter. You have Kyle Connor on the power play, which was Wool saves the initial shot, can't track the rebound, Connor buries it. That one's on Wool. That he doesn't track the puck. That one is his fault. I am comfortable blaming him for that, even though there's a bit of a screen. I'm comfortable blaming him for that. The second goal, Scheifele puts it to an area, Connor tips it over the pad and in. Wool gets there. He does his job to get across, and Connor just does a good job of elevating the puck. Third goal was that the Scheifele was that the pass from Velarde?
Yeah, the jam. Yeah, Velarde to Scheifele.
Yeah, that's just a beautiful pass by Velarde, and again, it's a backdoor play. It's a bang bang play that like you can't expect a goalie to save that more than 10% of the time. And then a jam play. He makes Scheifele is left all alone in front of the net, and Wool sprawls out to make the initial save, and then the Leafs defense can't clear the puck after that. So, when will Wool turn his game around? He hasn't been bad. Like I respectfully, I vehemently disagree with any take that Wool has been bad. He's an average starter. He's an average starter. He's not an above average starter. Stolarz has been an above average starter this year, and that's why Wool looks worse by comparison because Stolarz has been so good. But Joseph Wool is very much an average starter in the NHL, and we've seen so much good from him this season alone that to take these two games and suddenly dismiss him, to me, is very reactionary and admittedly, I am a Joseph Wool stan. I do have a bit of a bias towards Wool. I can admit that, but I think he has all the potential in the world, and at worst, he'll give you a 9-10 on an average team. The Leafs have a good defense, which elevates his numbers a little bit, but I do disagree with that take.
Yeah, and I'm just seeing David's now just wrote, when will Wall turn his game around? If he doesn't do so soon, Leafs may very well hit the skids with Stolarz out.
The Leafs will be fine.
They'll be fine. It's more about Leafs are going to be a playoff. It's just about getting in the playoffs, and you want good goaltending once the playoff starts.
I'm a lot more worried about the Matt Murray starts because the Leafs have a lot of back-to-backs. They play a lot in December. They've played a lot so far this month, and they have a good a lot of games at the start of January too. So I'm a lot more worried about Matt Murray considering the game against Buffalo on Friday. He gives up 5 goals, but 2 of them get called back for different reasons, which. Look, he gets beat 5 times. That's a lot more worrying than the 2 games where Wool has, slightly mediocre games, even though today I don't put on him at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, I think that is where we are going to wrap the show. Ty, where can the people find you?
Probably best on the Bluesky app. I think a lot of us Game Over hosts have kind of migrated over there. Just my name, Ty Dilello, on Bluesky, and I still call it tweeting. I tweet during the Jets games and just about hockey stuff in general. So check us out there on Twitter. Also my name, Ty Dilello. And yeah, go Jets, go! It was a good game. It was a good game today, and thank you, David, for being in the chat. Even though your takes aren't the best, we appreciate you having you watching our show. So we're not just talking to ourselves here. So we appreciate it.
Oh, that's some shots fired there at David in the waning moments of the show. You could find me on Twitter and Bluesky at ZachPayne41 as well. Make sure you like and subscribe, like the stream, subscribe to Game Over Toronto if you're on a podcasting platform. Make sure you follow both Game Over Toronto and Winnipeg. Go over, subscribe to Game Over Winnipeg as well to see Ty break down Jets games throughout the season. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time. Have a Merry Christmas, and if you celebrate, if you don't, have a happy holidays. Spend some time with your friends and family, and we'll see you guys next time.